Humanity Matters.
Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of Legacy Chronicles, Honoring the Past and Shaping the Future. I'm Donna Rosenblum. I'm your host and Director of Education here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. And I have the privilege, the real privilege, of getting to speak with, today, a very good friend, Dinah Kramer, who is a second generation, a docent, and very involved here at hmTV, as we will talk about. And welcome, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. So let's start off by first talking about your parents. Can you just, I know it's going to be hard, but just briefly introduce each one of them, because they were both survivors, where they were, and their brief stories.
Okay. Both of my parents were born in Kielce, Poland, which is an infamous city for what happened after the war there. Mm-hmm. My dad was a family of 9 children. 5 of the kids survived. 2 of them were already married. 1 of them had children. And my father was in several concentration camps, including Auschwitz and Mauthausen. Mm-hmm. But he never spoke about his experience. Mm-hmm. My mother was born in Kielce and then moved to another town called Skarżysko-Kamienica when she was about 5 or 6 years old. And she grew up a very privileged life until the war came. Then she was in several slave labor camps pretty young. And she was saved because of her father's role. And her mom was killed. My maternal grandmother was murdered in Treblinka. Mm-hmm. But in the first labor camp, my mother met a woman who became my grandmother later on, mm-hmm. and she basically saved her life.
Wow. Were both your parents tattooed?
My father was, because he was in Auschwitz. My
right.
mom was in labor camps. So Auschwitz was the only camp that tattooed a number. Mm-hmm. Okay. And when I first noticed my father's tattoo when I was a little kid, it was up in the bungalow colony, because mm-hmm. we spent our summers there. And he was with a group of friends, and I first paid attention, I guess, to his tattoo. And I said, "What is that?" And he said that when he was little, he couldn't remember his phone number. And so they wrote it on his arm. Mm-hmm. And his number was B298. So I knew that that wasn't a phone number, mm-hmm. but I also knew not to
ask. Yeah, right. So speaking of that, growing up with both your parents being survivors, when did you first, when did the first inkling happen that they were survivors or Holocaust, or did they associate with other survivors? Was there a survivor community? Did they speak a different language? Like all of those things. How did that come about?
Okay, that's a lot.
Yes.
So they never used the term Holocaust survivor. They were always identified as greeners, which is the Yiddish word for greenhorn. So they differentiated between Amerikaners and greeners, and Yiddish was spoken very prominently. Mm-hmm. And they always associated with other survivors, mm-hmm. and so they were kind of like many refugee communities. They were close-knit. I don't know when I actually understood mm-hmm. what that meant. I think it was always kind of background noise.
Right.
It was always, they were survivors, and that was it. And I really don't think I understood what that actually meant. And I don't think I heard somebody speak without an accent until I got to kindergarten, an adult
right.
speak without
right.
an accent until I went to kindergarten. But and Holocaust education was not prevalent when I was in school.
Right.
And I was not a fan of social studies. I didn't have Donna Rosenblum as my teacher. But I remember being in high school and reading in a textbook a paragraph about the Holocaust, and I kept reading and rereading that text, because that might have been when the light bulb went off, and I said, oh, my parents were a part of a history. You know, I really didn't know about it. It was just kind of there.
Wow. So in your upbringing, being a child of survivors, was there anything that you noticed that was kind of different in your house than some of your friends? Were most of your friends in your neighborhood Jewish, not Jewish? So to make that comparison?
Yeah, probably primarily Jewish, but not children of survivors. And we lived in a two-family house, and the upstairs tenant was Germans, non-Jewish Germans, which was interesting.
That is interesting.
Hindsight that they rented to them. But I did always feel that my parents were different. Like they didn't go out socially with other friends' parents. They clung together. Family was most important, and they really stayed with family, and they played cards constantly. There was something else you asked that I was going to... Oh, there were a few other things that came up. I wasn't allowed to join the Brownies because of the color of the uniform, but my mother never explained that until later. When I got to college, clogs were very popular, and she forbade me from
wearing clogs.
Wearing clogs because that, and she explained it at that point because it reminded her of the shoes they wore during the war. But when I came home from, I used to borrow my roommate's clogs, and one time I came home from school wearing them. So.
Yeah, well, that's what you did when you were a kid.
They were overprotective.
Yes. All right. So overprotective. What about their relationship to certain things? We hear that many survivors always had cash on hand. That they always had an issue with food. That there was the bag. There was like a bag packed, ready to go. Like they were very distrust. There was a whole distrust factor that they felt that at any moment life could change.
Yes. Well, cash was definitely always in the house, and my father was in the cash business too. And we would get quizzed on his hiding spots. And he also, after the war, my father was involved in the black market. So he got to know the value of diamonds and jewelry. So even though that wasn't his business, his avocation was to go down to 47th Street and buy and sell jewelry there. And that was his passion. So there was, jewels in the house and all that stuff. And again, we were quizzed on it. Food was, you didn't waste food. My father had to have soup every night for dinner.
Okay.
And a different soup, and it had to be hot. But there was no go bag packed. I have friends who told me that they slept with a bag under their bed. And my father always said, don't show off because people are inherently jealous. And I used to poo-poo him. And as I got older, I realized, he wasn't so wrong about that.
So were your parents very religious?
No, my father came from a very Orthodox home. He was almost going to go to Hader to be a cantor. He went to Hader, rather, to be a cantor. And he kind of like, where was God? So he did not. It was very important for him to be Jewish, and he told me that I had to only date Jewish boys, and that if I wasn't sure, if I couldn't tell from their last name if they were Jewish, I should ask them about their bar mitzvah, which was, in those days we didn't have themed bar mitzvahs, so I was like, okay, Daddy. But he only stepped foot in a temple if he absolutely had to.
Did he wear a Jewish star? Was there anything? Did he wear any identifier of being Jewish?
No, he didn't wear jewelry. So,
all right.
He didn't. But it was, Judaism was very important to him, but not the observant part of it.
Right.
And I'm a member of a Reconstructionist synagogue now, so in a lot of ways he had that Reconstructionist ideology, but he probably wouldn't have loved my synagogue. And my mother, who grew up a little more assimilated in a wealthy family, she dealt with religion in a different way. She wouldn't drive on the high holidays, so she would go like around the block to the little synagogue that was ultra-Orthodox, men and women separate. But we didn't grow up in a kosher home. I jokingly say we had ham on matzah. But she had her own little quirky things that she had to.
What about the not having a lot of family around, like not having your certain grandparents
Well,
or aunts and uncles and things like that?
I did have a lot because they came
came
from
here.
Silla.
That's right.
Right. So my father had 4 siblings survived, and they all lived very close by. And my grandfather survived with my mother's stepmom. And so I did have one
Some
set
family,
of grandparents, and I had a lot of aunts and uncles. Family was first and foremost. When my sister and I would fight, my father would always say, friends are going to come and go, but you'll always have your sister. And my sister and 2 of my first cousins live right by me. I play mahjong once a week with my cousins. We are very close, and our children are very close too. So family, that was really instilled in us, the importance of family.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful. So when did you take a real active interest in Holocaust education? I know that your background is a teacher. But even so, when did that happen? Is that in college, after college?
No, it wasn't until much later. So in my synagogue, Donna and I have a connection to Irving Roth, who is a very well-known, dynamic Holocaust educator. So Irving started a program called Adopt a Survivor, and it was implemented in my synagogue. My Rabbi Jody, implemented the Adopt a Survivor program, and when I learned about it, I said, oh, my mother should start participating in that. So I brought my mom to the program, and my sister and I would sit with her, and it was good because my mom would tell stories, but never in a linear fashion. It was always like to make a point, so we would hear bits and pieces of her story, but never the whole thing. And we always said, oh, we should write it down, and of course, life gets in the way and you don't. So
when was this?
That was
in the mid-2000s?
Yeah, it was probably like 2012, 2013.
Okay, so your mom didn't speak until
She
much
didn't
later.
speak publicly.
Publicly,
No.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And she never liked to address a whole crowd. It was a small group.
Right.
One year she did address the kids in the synagogue, but I had written it up for her, and she botched it up a little bit, but whatever. She was fine. She wasn't comfortable doing that. But as she started doing this, she realized that people were interested, and she would tell more and more people her story.
Sure.
And so then I retired from teaching in 2014, and I decided I needed some structure in my life and to do something. So I contacted Irving and asked him if he wanted some help. And I helped him with the Adopt a Survivor program, and I got to call the survivors that were involved in the program, and that was amazing because I developed some relationships with some very incredible human beings, and got to know them on, not just as survivors, but as whole human beings. And Donna and I share that history because we know the same people.
When did your father pass away?
My father passed away in 1996.
1996.
I had signed up both of them to do the Shoah tapes, and primarily because of my father. And then I found out after he passed away that he was scheduled a few times to do it, and he kept postponing it. So he passed away before he could do it. My mom did it a few months after my dad had passed away. So I have that.
So you know your mom's story very well.
Yes,
Your father's story, you don't know.
I've looked stuff up, but I don't know his story. And my mother's I know well, and I tell it here.
Of course. Well, that was going to be our next thing. So when did you get involved at hmTC?
Okay, so I was involved with Irving, and then in 2014, 16, he told me about March of the Living, and he was going to be going on the trip through the center. And I had a friend who's also a daughter of survivors who was starting to get involved at the center. She has since dropped the ball on it, but anyway.
That's okay.
She got me involved, and I started training to be a docent here. I think I hold the title of the longest docent in training.
That's okay.
But it was good because I got to see a lot of different people. And so I was still working with Irving until he passed away in 21, and I got involved more at the center.
Sure. Right, but you were a docent here before COVID.
I
No,
can't,
or just you were a docent in training?
I was a docent in training before COVID. I had done a paired tour right before, like in March of 2020, and then COVID hit. And
So then you had
during COVID, through the center, they had a course on how to tell your parents' story. And I did that program,
Right.
and that was amazing because I actually put together my mother's story.
Yes.
I don't think I would have had the discipline if it wasn't for taking that course.
That's great. That's great. So you are a docent here, and you give plenty of tours to schools, and then you also provide your mother's testimony.
Right.
All right. Do you do both in one shot? Would you ever? Do you ever?
I have.
You have, but that's a lot.
That's only because the speaker canceled at the last minute, or something like that.
Okay.
I try not to do that because I like to weave, her
Right.
story and my father's story into my chores, and it is a lot.
Yes. How does it make you feel to tell your mom's story? What emotions can you pinpoint?
I don't know that I can. I think I build a wall. Like that's my, psychological defense mechanism, and that's why I think I can read Holocaust literature. I don't think about it. I love seeing her on the screen because I have clips of her in the video in my presentation, and I love watching the students when they watch her.
Well, that's it. That's what I'm saying. So I feel the same way when I tell Irving's story. I feel like I'm keeping him in the room, and I'm making that connection, and I know that that's what he wanted. So, so I feel like it's as difficult as it is. It's what we need to do. That's what I'm trying to hit home as to it must be difficult to tell your mom's story, but the satisfaction that you get knowing that kids are learning about what she went through and making that connection and maybe being better people as a result of that. I mean, you can't put a price on that.
Right. I actually don't find it difficult. I find that it's just rewarding to do that, and I feel like I'm keeping her alive that way. I wish I had my dad's story. But I feel like my mother was such an optimistic person. When you hear what she always would say, I didn't have it as bad as other people. She was 12 years old when she was in a forced labor camp.
Yeah.
But she had that very optimistic outlook on, sometimes annoyingly optimistic outlook on life, and
that might have been what she needed to have in order to get through what she went through. Now you have a sister, you said.
Yes.
Does your sister share your passion for Holocaust education, or have any plans on? Does she tell your mother's story in any way?
Well, she's still working full time. So,
okay.
And as I said, she was she was there when my mom would tell help tell her story to the kids. I'm not sure what she's going to do with it when she retires. My older daughter is a school counselor, coordinator of school counselors in Virginia, and she has told my parents' stories to fourth graders when they read the book Numbered Stars. And she's started to look into getting involved in 3GDC, but
Wonderful.
nothing's happened yet. So,
all right. Well, there's plenty of time.
Yes.
And
yes.
it's but that's wonderful, and that must make you very proud.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is, as we lose our survivors, and every year we lose them, and the ability for kids to hear that firsthand survivor testimony is not going to be an option in a few years, and the second generation has kind of stepped into those shoes and is doing that. There are many second generation that maybe don't know the story or don't speak or aren't comfortable, and that, of course, is okay. But would you have any words to maybe express to them to think differently?
Yeah, because I've tried to get that friend who was involved that got me to the center. I push her a little. I'm a good nag, and I've gotten my cousin to come here and tell her father's story, her mother's story rather, and it's a rewarding experience. And it's, it is difficult, and it involves a lot of research, and it's an important thing to do. I'm going to quote Irving. When he tried to get a bunch of us second gens to start telling a parent story, he said not to wait until all the survivors were gone, and he analogized it to a relay race. And he said, when you run in a relay race, the second runner doesn't stand still until the first runner passes them. They run alongside each other and then pass the baton. And I think that's just a beautiful analogy to, the importance of doing this. And the third generation as well.
Absolutely. And that's kind of definitely what we do. And I feel that here at hmTC, we have a real nice family. It's very, it's I don't know, I walk into a community meeting with all our 2Gs and with survivors and our docents, and it's like it's an extended family of the family. It's really a beautiful thing. It's very hard to describe how all of these people are, I feel, are now part of my family too, which is, it's wonderful. It's great. I think that's the passing of the baton is an important piece. And you're right, you have to run alongside and not wait until they're gone so that you can do it alongside them.
Yes. And there are a lot of questions I wish I had asked. And so if there are any young people out there, even if it's not a survivor, get to know your family story, because you'll have questions. I've also helped this woman, Dinah Kramer, who does a podcast of grandchildren talking to their survivor grandparents, because she wished she had asked them more questions, and it's a beautiful thing. So I've helped get her survive. Sometimes I feel like an agent for survivors. And the other project that I was involved with, one of the times I was at Irving Center a long time ago, and I was doing the history, and Irving spoke and told his story. There was a student in the audience whose father is a professional photographer, and Danny was blown away by Irving, and he called me up one night and said, I want to photograph Irving. And I was like, okay, I couldn't understand what he wanted to do with this.
Right.
Because I'm a little bit of a driven person, if you haven't noticed. And if I take on a task, I take it on wholeheartedly. And so I said, I know other survivors, and we photographed 18 survivors. We had the exhibit here, and it's traveled all over.
And in my library.
In your library. It's going to Oswego, because that was in the war. Was Oswego or Oneonta? I always get those two confused.
I don't know.
Where was there a group of survivors saved by the War Refugee Board? I think it was Oswego.
Okay.
And there's
sounds good. Well, we can always look it up.
It's either Oswego or Oneonta.
Oneonta, so it's one of those.
And it's going up there because that's where Danny went to college, and that's where it's going to be, I think, in October.
Nice.
So it is traveling there. But they're all local survivors, and we photographed another group, and we're waiting to get that together off the ground. So that's been, tell the story in as many different medium as possible.
Right.
And that's what you're doing here with the podcast.
Yep. And it's all about getting that message out and making it relatable to people in whatever way that they want to connect. So thank you.
So they read that paragraph in the textbook and have that aha moment.
That's right. So thank you, Dinah, for joining us today on our podcast. And for our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.